Hi everybody and welcome. I'm so glad you've chosen to wind down your day with me. Whether you're tucked beneath soft blankets, resting your head on a quiet pillow, or simply letting the day slip away into a gentle dusk, tonight we're going somewhere unusual. We're going to a battlefield. Now don't worry, there will be no screaming or bloodshed here, not tonight. Instead, we'll walk slowly through the mists of time, stepping softly into the lesser-known truths of what a real medieval battle looked like. Not the dramatic, noisy ones from movies with slow-motion sword fights and thundering music. No, tonight's journey will be slower, sleepier, rich in mud, muffled laughter, cold porridge, and a fair amount of itchy wool. You see, we've often been told that medieval battles were glorious things, brave knights charging down green hills, banners fluttering heroically, swords clashing under a perfect blue sky. But the reality was muddier, wetter, considerably smellier. Imagine this. It's early morning in the year 1387. The sun isn't up yet. Dew clings thickly to the grass like melted pearls. Your boots are soaked already and you haven't even moved. Around you, the camp is just beginning to stir. Some men groan awake, others sit silently, staring into tiny fires. A donkey sneezes. In the distance, someone somewhere is snoring like a church bell wrapped in a blanket. This isn't the battlefield yet. This is the morning before, and this is where our story truly begins. Over the next several chapters, we're going to explore this moment in depth, what it smelled like, what people worried about, how they dressed, what they carried, and what they expected might happen that day. You'll meet not just knights and kings, but stable boys, cooks, wandering priests, and the occasional stray chicken. You'll walk with them from sleepy dawn through the long moments before the clash, and even into what happened when the shouting died down and the battlefield stood silent once more. But for now, let's stay right here, just at the edge of the morning. Listen, do you hear it? The low rustling of canvas tents? The distant call of a crow grumbling over its breakfast? Perhaps the dull creak of a wooden cart being pushed a few feet closer to the command tent. A soldier nearby stretches and mutters something about how cold his toes are. He's not wrong. It's the kind of cold that creeps, not crashes. The sort that drifts up your sleeves, your collar, and finally, annoyingly, into your thoughts. The fire near your bedroll has died down to lazy embers. A few last puffs of smoke rise and twist like tired ghosts in the half-light. This might be a famous morning, though no one here knows it yet. History books in centuries to come might call this the site of a great conflict. But for the moment, to most of the people here, it's simply another damp, uncomfortable dawn, and they're tired. Oh, they're very tired. Many didn't sleep much. Too many nervous thoughts, too many strange sounds. A few men tried to snore bravely through the night, but others lay staring up at the canvas ceiling, counting breaths instead of sheep. Some worried about the battle, others worried about their feet, and one man, somewhere near the edge of the camp, definitely worried about the chunk of meat he ate the night before. There's a strange kind of peace in the air this morning, not the peace of joy, but the soft quiet that comes when people are holding their breath, when they're waiting for something big, but not yet ready to face it. A knight nearby is whispering a prayer as he sharpens his sword. Not dramatically, just methodically. He murmurs the names of saints in a rhythm he's repeated hundreds of times before. Not because he expects miracles, but because the routine comforts him. The sound of his whetstone scraping against metal is oddly soothing. Farther off, two squires argue about whether their lord prefers his saddle higher or lower. They resolve nothing, but their chatter makes the morning feel more human. And then there's you. Yes, you. Imagine you're part of this world now. Perhaps you're a page, tasked with running errands and fetching water. Or maybe you're a traveling poet who somehow got stuck near a battlefield while searching for rhymes about turnips. You sit on a log, wrapping your cloak tighter, staring at the low fog and wondering whether today's events will make a good story. They will. But not just because of who wins or loses. No, this story matters because it tells us something deeper, that history isn't just made by the clang of swords. It's made in small, slow moments, mornings like this one, where men, young and old, rich and poor, noble and not, sit together in the early cold and wonder what comes next. In this series, we'll explore it all: the food, the tents, the gossip, the bad breath, the weird superstitions, the aching backs. We'll stroll through the entire experience, not with excitement, but with gentle curiosity, with warmth, with kindness. So tonight, let's begin our journey into the quieter corners of a medieval battlefield. You won't need armor or maps or even shoes, just your imagination, and perhaps a cozy blanket. Let's wander slowly, let's listen closely, and most importantly, let's get comfortable. Because this is going to be a long, wonderful story, and it starts right here. It is, without exaggeration, a thoroughly unglamorous morning. The kind of morning where your socks are wet before you've even put your boots on, where the firewood is stubborn, the sky is gray with no promise of ever becoming blue, and the only warm thing in camp is the goat someone left too close to the fire. This is what it's really like before a medieval battle. No swelling music. No synchronized armor polishing. No generals pacing dramatically through fog. Just mud, and wool, and a lot of silent staring. Let's take a walk, shall we? Step softly. There's a puddle. Another one. Actually, the entire path between the tent seems to be made of puddles. Your foot squelches unpleasantly. Welcome to morning. Around you, the camp is slowly waking. Soldiers are unlacing their rough blankets, some with an expression best described as betrayed by the weather. One man has slept halfway under a cart and now has a perfectly rectangular dent on his forehead. Another is trying to dry his socks over a flame that's more smoke than heat. Someone coughs. Someone else mutters something that sounds like a curse, though it could just be the name of a particularly stubborn mule. The fog is so thick, it turns torches into faint orange blobs. A few figures trudge by, barely visible through the mist like soggy ghosts with bed hair. Breakfast, if you can call it that, is being handed out from a pot the size of a beer barrel. It's some kind of porridge. Gray, lukewarm, determinedly bland. One soldier looks into his bowl and says, with real melancholy, "It tastes like defeat." Nearby, a man is trying to clean his helmet using the corner of his tunic and some spit. He's been at it for 10 minutes. The result is not impressive. He sighs, puts it back on, and pretends not to care. Everyone's pretending not to care. The truth is, many of them are nervous. They just don't say it. They chew their food, slowly glance at the sky, and tell each other half-hearted jokes. It's a kind of camouflage, the emotional armor of people who know something serious is coming but would rather not name it. You hear laughter from one tent. Someone made a joke about the commander's haircut again. It's the third time this week. Nobody actually thinks it's funny anymore, but laughing is better than thinking. A young boy, maybe 14, maybe 15, is sitting alone, legs crossed, staring into the distance. His spear is too tall for him. His eyes look older than they should. He picks at the grass, not really thinking. Perhaps this is his first battle. Perhaps he lied about his age. He hums a tune under his breath that his mother used to sing. No one notices him, but we do. Meanwhile, a dog is trotting happily through the chaos. No armor, no fear. Just a piece of bread in its mouth and a tail that refuses to acknowledge danger. Further down the line, two older soldiers argue about whether goose fat or garlic helps keep bad spirits away. They have no proof either way, but it keeps their hands busy as they check their gear. This morning is a strange mix of calm and disquiet. Nothing is happening, and yet everything feels poised, as if the air itself is waiting, and so are the birds. It might surprise you to know that birds still chirp before battle. They don't know, or don't care, about the drama unfolding beneath their trees. They sing as they always do, fluttering from branch to branch, occasionally landing on a helmet. One soldier shot a crow off his shoulder, only to realize it had left a parting gift on his cloak. He sighed and said, "Well, that's lucky, isn't it?" His friend replied, "Only if it misses the inside of your helmet." There is boredom, too. Great, heaping piles of it. Battles, for all their drama, are preceded by an awful lot of standing around. There are no rehearsals, no warm-ups, just waiting. Some men sharpen blades they've already sharpened. Others count arrows they counted the night before. One group, entirely bored, is betting on which beetle will reach the fire pit first. The beetles are unaware of the stakes. And then there's the sky. Flat, pale, reluctant. It offers no signs, no omens, no dramatic foreshadowing. Just endless gray. A low ceiling over everyone's heads. For those of us in the present looking back, it's tempting to dramatize this moment, to imagine fire in their eyes, speeches echoing through the ranks, hearts pounding with anticipation. But in truth, most hearts are just beating quietly. Some skip a beat, yes, but not from glory, from fear, or the cold, or indigestion. There's a man named Thomas, at least today we'll call him that, who spent the night arguing with a piece of undercooked venison. He's now pacing nervously behind the latrine tents, whispering prayers to every saint he can remember. Not for victory, for relief. This, dear listener, is the real morning before battle. It's not loud, it's not glorious. It's cold, damp, and honestly rather boring. But it is deeply human. And in that quiet humanity there is something beautiful, something worth remembering. Because history isn't just about the moments when swords are raised. It's also about the long, sleepy hours when everyone's boots are soggy, and no one wants to be the first to say, "I'm scared." So let's linger here a little longer. Let the fog settle into our cloaks. Let the sounds of the camp become a lullaby. There's no rush, the battle will come soon enough, but for now let's just be here, together. When we think of a medieval army, most of us picture the same handful of characters. Tall, broad-shouldered knights in shining armor, stern-faced archers with eagle-like vision, rows of foot soldiers in matching tunics, ready to march in perfect formation. But the reality was messier and far more interesting. You see, a medieval army wasn't just an assembly of warriors. It was more like a temporary moving village, with all the delightful chaos and oddball characters you might expect from such a description. Let's take a little stroll through camp again, shall we? This time, not just to feel the dampness underfoot, but to meet the people. First, of course, there are the knights. Yes, they're here. Tall, well-armored, and deeply uncomfortable in all that metal. They walk like people trying not to admit their back hurts. Their armor glints dully in the mist, and their squires, young boys or low-ranking servants, buzz around them like overworked bees, oiling hinges, tightening straps, and trying not to get yelled at. These knights are not all noble heroes. Some are kind and brave, yes. Others are insufferably proud. One fellow, we'll call him Sir Reynold, insists on being called the Tempest. He chose the name himself. His horse, for the record, does not share this enthusiasm. Then we have the foot soldiers, grizzled men and fresh-faced boys standing side by side in mismatched armor and hand-me-down helmets. They come from villages, towns, farms, and cities. Some joined because they were conscripted, others because they had nothing left at home. A few, oddly enough, because they genuinely wanted to. One of them, a broad fellow named Edgar, carries a frying pan instead of a sword. Not because he forgot his weapon, but because he believes it brings him luck. His comrades aren't sure whether to laugh or follow his example. You'll find the archers in their own little huddle, slightly aloof, proud of their craft. Their bows are tall, elegant things made of yew, and their fingers are calloused from endless practice. They smell faintly of beeswax and damp leather. One of them, a woman in a hood too large for her face, hums constantly as she fletches her arrows. No one knows her name, but everyone calls her Whistle. But now let's wander past the fighters. Who else is here? Ah, yes, the camp followers. Now, don't let the name mislead you. Camp followers were essential. They included cooks, blacksmiths, washerwomen, tailors, scribes, barbers, carpenters, and more. The cook, for example, is a large man named Gervais with a nose like a parsnip and a perpetual expression of mild irritation. He runs a stew pot that could feed 20 or poison 5. It depends on the day. He once told a knight, "If you want flavor, go lick your sword." No one argues with Gervais. Then there's the blacksmith, a woman with arms like tree trunks and a laugh that can be heard through armor. She repairs swords, horseshoes, and egos, often all in the same morning. Her forge is small but busy, and her apprentice once accidentally set his own pants on fire. Twice. And oh, don't forget the washerwomen. They are the unacknowledged queens of camp cleanliness. Fiercely efficient, with rolled-up sleeves and expressions that brook no nonsense. If you leave your tunic in a puddle, they will find it, clean it, dry it, and then scold you loudly while doing so. Beyond them, in quieter corners, you'll find others. A wandering monk who offers blessings for a crust of bread. He walks with a limp and mutters prayers in Latin, but he's also suspiciously good at cards. A pair of minstrels who were meant to entertain the Lord, but have instead taken to singing bawdy songs near the latrines. They get more laughs than coin, but they don't seem to mind. And then, there's the goat. No one knows who it belongs to. It just appeared. It wanders from tent to tent, nibbling unattended food, and occasionally startling squires by yelling loudly at inconvenient moments. One man tried to chase it away only to slip in the mud and land in his own helmet. The goat was unimpressed. There are children, too. Not many, but a few. Sons of soldiers, young pages, camp-born babies carried on the hips of washerwomen. They grow up among tents and smoke, learning the rhythms of army life before they can write their names. And somewhere on the edge of the camp sits an old man. No one knows if he's a veteran, a runaway, or simply wandered into camp and decided to stay. He sharpens sticks for no reason anyone can figure out and tells wildly contradictory stories about having fought in 15 battles and one duel with a goose. All of these people, odd, ordinary, smelly, skilled, make up the army. Not just the fighters, but the lifeblood of the entire machine. Without them, the camp would crumble. The horses would go unfed, the weapons would rust, the socks would remain terrifying. They may not appear in history books, but they are, without doubt, part of history. So next time someone tells you about a medieval battle, of knights and kings, and grand strategy, remember Edgar's frying pan, remember the goat, remember Whistle with her arrows, and Gervais with his stew, because the truth of the past lives not just in the battles, but in the people who made the battle possible. And every one of them today is still just trying to stay dry, stay fed, and maybe, just maybe, stay alive. You might think that preparing for a medieval battle was a quick affair. A trumpet call, a few shouts, maybe someone yelling "to arms" in a dramatic voice. But the truth? Getting ready for battle was more like preparing for a particularly difficult wedding. Except instead of guests, you're expecting arrows, and instead of cake, there's mud. Let's begin at first light. The knights rise slowly, most of them stiff from sleeping on the ground. Their armor is stored in pieces, beside their bedrolls, and none of it is easy to put on alone. Even the simplest chainmail shirt can weigh more than a sack of turnips, and the full-plate armor, well, let's just say it's less suit and more portable furnace. First, the padding goes on. Thick linen or woolen garments, sweat-stained, and often stiff with wear. These are what keep the armor from rubbing skin raw. They also trap heat like a bread oven and make everyone smell like old soup. Then comes the chainmail. It takes 2 men to pull it over a knight's head, especially if he's still sleepy or stubbornly sipping his morning broth. The links clink and clatter, and the knight grunts and mumbles prayers or complaints as each part falls into place. The greaves for the legs, the vambraces for the arms, the breastplate heavy and awkward buckled tight by a squiring teenager who's still half asleep, and of course the helmet. The helmet is always last, not because it's difficult, but because once it's on, you can barely hear, barely see, and certainly can't scratch your nose. More than one knight has panicked slightly when realizing he forgot to pee before suiting up. Yes, bodily needs are a very real part of battlefield prep, and no one wants to be the one who has to undress during combat. So naturally there are bathroom trips, long, awkward, and slightly undignified ones. A quiet parade of armored men waddling into the bushes, muttering about destiny and destiny's poor timing. Meanwhile, down in the infantry lines, things are less refined. Soldiers are checking their weapons with varying degrees of seriousness. Some sharpen their blades with loving care, whispering encouragement to their favorite dagger. Others prod their spears once or twice and declare them good enough. A few take time to wrap lucky charms around their hilts, dried herbs, strands of hair, tiny bits of bone, or carved trinkets blessed by traveling monks. One fellow ties a spoon to his belt, just in case. He refuses to explain further. Then there's the question of shoes. Footwear, in many ways, is the true deciding factor of any battle. Good boots mean a day of trudging through mud and coming out alive. Bad boots? Well, you'll find out the hard way. Men are stuffing straw into their soles for warmth. Some are wrapping strips of cloth around their ankles to keep the blisters from reopening. One man is trying to dry his boots by the fire while wearing only one sock and a look of deep concern. And in the midst of all this chaos, there's the weapon check. It's not formal, but it happens. Arrows are counted. Blades are tested against the edges of wooden poles. Shields are banged on the ground to see if the leather straps still hold. One soldier realizes his shield is now mostly termites. He sighs and borrows a cooking pot lid. Even the horses must be prepped. They're brushed quickly, fed hurried oats, and fitted with saddles that creak and jolt. A knight's horse is a thing of pride, but today it is mostly a thing of mild irritation. It stomps, it snorts, it eyes the fog with suspicion. Somewhere in the camp, a squire is chasing a runaway steed with a bridle in one hand and a curse in the other. Commanders, meanwhile, are trying to look busy. They pace back and forth, checking scrolls, nodding at maps, pointing at hills, and pretending to understand the terrain. Some give speeches. Most are ignored. A few actually inspire their men, though this is usually due to sheer volume, not content. One lord, convinced of his rhetorical power, climbs atop a crate and begins shouting about honor. The crate breaks halfway through. His speech ends abruptly. The crowd claps politely out of sympathy. Back at the cooking tents, Gervais the cook is handing out second helpings of porridge to those who ask nicely. He has declared today a full-stomach fight day and no one dares argue. And then there is silence. For a moment, the preparations, loud and chaotic, begin to quiet as the morning wears on. Everyone has done what they can. Everything is mostly in place. And now comes the waiting. The horses paw at the ground. The archers flex their fingers. The foot soldiers tighten their belts. A few men sit on logs, staring into space. One hums a lullaby under his breath. Another writes his name in the dirt with a stick, and all of them wonder quietly, privately, will I still be here tonight? That is the unspoken weight of readiness, not the armor or the sword, but the fear beneath it. But for now they wear that fear like they wear their helmets, tightly, awkwardly, and with no other option. This, then, is how you get ready for battle, with boots that don't fit, with a borrowed spoon, with prayers whispered into fog, and with a quiet hope that all the fuss might not be needed after all. It always happens, right before battle, just when everyone has finished tightening their belts, adjusting their armor, and perhaps saying a small private prayer to whoever might be listening. There's a pause, a hush, not of peace but of protocol, because now it's time for the speech. Yes, that speech. The grand, roaring monologue that's supposed to fire the hearts of men, rouse courage from their boots, and paint honor across the canvas of fear. It's the bit the historians love to quote. It's the scene in every movie where the music swells and the camera pans dramatically across faces filled with resolve. But in reality, it's a bit more awkward. Let's look at our Lord today, Sir Balthazar de Montchevroy, a name longer than his sword, and an ego to match. He's dressed in his finest armor, freshly polished, though a little too tight around the middle. His helmet has a feather, bright red, bobbing slightly with every breath. He steps up onto a wooden crate or perhaps an overturned barrel. It's hard to tell. What matters is that he's higher than the rest. Visibility is key when one is about to deliver greatness. Around him, his men gather, though not exactly eagerly. Some are still lacing boots. One is chewing a carrot. Another mutters, "Here we go again," under his breath. And then, with a dramatic clearing of the throat that could wake a cat 3/10 over, he begins. "Brave men," he bellows. The carrot chewer nods, slowly. "Today we stand, not as villagers nor merchants nor mere peasants with pointy sticks, but as lions, lions of destiny." One soldier whispers to another, "Did he say lions?" "Yes. Do lions even fight in formation?" Sir Balthazar continues, undeterred. He waves his sword in the air for emphasis, nearly knocking off his own helmet plume. "They may outnumber us," he cries. "They may tower over us. They may have shinier horses and better food and fewer fleas. But—" The crowd perks up slightly. They do in fact care about fleas, but they do not have our spirit, our valor, our unyielding courage. From somewhere in the back, a quiet voice. "Do we?" It is ignored. The speech goes on, and on, and on. There's talk of honor, of duty, of ancient legacies and the blood of forefathers. Sir Balthazar references some ancestor who defeated 1,000 with a spoon. He misquotes a famous poem. He mispronounces the enemy's name. He begins to sweat slightly. At one point, he tries to rhyme something about valor with tavern, and the silence that follows is thick enough to cut with a dagger. Meanwhile, the soldiers are shifting their weight. A man near the front is balancing his sword on one finger. Someone in the back is definitely napping. One archer is whittling the end of a stick into the shape of a duck. And just when you think the speech must be over, surely it must be, Sir Balthazar raises both arms and shouts, "Now go forth. Bring glory to your names." A few cheers erupt, mostly out of relief. The men disperse quietly. The duck whittler pockets his sculpture. The carrot chewer finishes his snack. No one mentions the lions again. But here's the thing. As silly as it might seem, as theatrical and overwrought, as these speeches could be, they still mattered. Not always because of what was said, but because of what they represented. They were a signal, a transition, a marker between the world of waiting and the world of doing. When a lord spoke, it meant things were about to begin. It meant the uncertainty of the morning had solidified into action, that whatever was coming, be it fear, danger, or mud, it was no longer hypothetical. And so even if the words were muddled or misquoted or just plain silly, they still held weight, even if it was just the weight of shared silence. Back in the tent, someone chuckles. "Lions," he says again. His friend grins. "I'm more of a badger, really." And with that, they lift their gear, tighten their straps, and walk toward whatever comes next. No music, no fanfare, just the soft sound of boots on soil and a single feather bouncing gently on the wind. There comes a moment, just after the speeches and the grumbling, when the army finally begins to move. Not charge. No, that comes much later. This is the march. The slow, foot-numbing journey from the safety of camp to the uncertain theater of battle. It begins with an order, usually shouted. Sometimes repeated 3 times because the first 2 were swallowed by wind or misunderstood as, "Does anyone have cheese?" Today's command comes from a hoarse-voiced herald on a tired gray horse. "Form ranks," he calls. "4 banks?" Someone repeats. "No, ranks. Ranks." Eventually, the message gets across. But forming ranks is no simple task. It's like trying to arrange sleepy cows into a marching band. The knights, naturally, move first. They know where they belong, at the front or flanking the sides. Their horses snort and paw the ground as if eager, though most would clearly prefer a nap. The men-at-arms fall in behind, clinking and clanking like mobile cutlery drawers. Then come the archers, who shuffle reluctantly, still comparing bowstrings and betting on which of them will trip first. After that, well, things get creative. The camp followers aren't technically part of the formation, but they tag along anyway. Some to help, others because they're curious, and one or two because they left something on the other side of the field and want it back. And then finally, everyone begins to walk. Marching, in theory, should be rhythmic, graceful, a display of discipline. In reality, it is a muddled shuffle of boots, hooves, and the occasional ow when someone gets stepped on. The ground is uneven. One man's leg is shorter than the other. Someone's left foot is wrapped in a cheesecloth because his boot fell apart. The entire line sways like a drunk centipede, but they move forward, slowly, surely, and accompanied by a chorus of creaks, coughs, and the occasional flat note from a horn player who's still figuring out which end is which. Let's talk about sound for a moment, because the medieval march had a soundscape all its own. There's the clank of metal armor rubbing with each step, the thud of boots on soft ground, the swish of cloaks, the rattle of arrows, the soft curse of a man realizing he forgot his second glove. And then, more personal sounds. Someone humming, someone else mumbling a prayer, a young lad trying to recite yesterday's speech and getting the lines comically wrong. We are lions of valor and gravy. Then, of course, there's the mud. Oh, the mud. Sticky. Relentless. It tugs at every boot, threatening to claim socks, sandals, and dignity in equal measure. More than one soldier has lost a shoe to its ear, grasp and now marches unevenly, with the determination of a man who refuses to admit defeat to wet earth. One particularly unlucky squire trips entirely, landing with a squelch so dramatic that even the nearby horses seem concerned. He stands dripping, mutters something unrepeatable, and keeps going. No one offers to help, because in war, or at least in marching, there is a silent agreement. If it's your foot, it's your problem. Somewhere near the back, two older soldiers are debating the best marching songs. One prefers a chant about barley. The other favors a tale involving a wayward sheep and a wizard. Their voices rise and fall like a duet performed by exhausted donkeys. And through it all, the commander rides slowly alongside. He does not march, of course. He rides, perched atop. A well-bred horse, he scans the horizon as if expecting inspiration to appear among the clouds. His cloak flaps impressively. His boots are suspiciously clean. One of the footmen notices. Bet his toes are warm, he mutters. Bet he's got a cushion, his friend replies. They both nod solemnly. The march continues, and it is long, longer than anyone expected. They pass the same tree 3 times. At one point, they pause to let a flock of geese pass. The geese are unimpressed. By midday, the line has stretched. The front can't see the back, and the middle isn't entirely sure it exists. A knight asks if they're lost. His squire pretends not to hear. But still, they keep moving because movement feels like progress, because walking forward is easier than standing still and wondering what's coming. Because in a way, the march is a comfort. It means the battle is still in the future. It means that for now, all that's required is to put one mismatched foot in front of the other. And so they do. Until the ground begins to slope. Until the sky grows just a shade more serious. Until the noise fades and a kind of stillness rises. Slow and quiet and cold. The battlefield is near but not quite yet, so march on, friend. Squelch, clink, huff, step by crooked step. You're not alone and you haven't lost both shoes yet. It begins with a whisper. Someone near the front squints into the haze and mutters, "There. I think I see something." Of course, he could be seeing a clump of bushes, or a distant cow, or simply shadows playing tricks in the morning mist. But that doesn't matter, because the moment he says it, "I think I see something," the words ripple backward through the marching line like a breeze catching a field of wheat. What did he say? Something up ahead? Did he say enemy? And just like that, the mood changes. Where before there was grumbling and soggy socks, now there is tension. Not loud, not sharp, but creeping, slow, like cold water down your spine. The horizon suddenly becomes very interesting. Everyone is staring. Now some shade their eyes. Others crouch slightly, though that does little beyond strain their knees. A few men mutter hopeful suggestions. Could be trees, could be birds, could be nothing. And yet, The whisper remains. The enemy. They might be there. Right at the edge of sight, behind that dip in the land, hidden by fog or bushes, or the sheer mischief of the weather. And the thing is, no one really knows. Because battlefield intelligence in the medieval world was a curious beast. It came from rumors, guesses, hastily scrawled notes from scouts who hadn't slept, and occasionally from shepherds who claimed they'd seen a great host of armored giants, only to later admit they might have just been watching clouds. Today's scout, a thin fellow with an expression of permanent apology, arrives slightly breathless and very muddy. They're close, he says. How close? He gestures vaguely. Close-ish. Not entirely reassuring, still, it's enough. The army halts. The murmuring continues. Men look up at the sky as if it might confirm something. A few try to climb small hills for a better view, but mostly succeed in slipping back down. And then, as if on cue, someone sees a bird take off suddenly from a tree in the distance. There. Where? Did you see it? A bird? No, behind the bird. Suddenly everyone has an opinion. I saw a glint, might be armor. I saw a shape, might be a horse. I saw nothing, but it looked suspicious. The commander is called for. He rides to the front, followed by his squire, whose main job today appears to be holding a very large map upside down. Sir Balthazar peers into the fog with what he hopes is a commanding squint. He sees something. He nods solemnly. Enemy presence confirmed, he declares. This, of course, means that somewhere out there, someone might be standing still enough and ominously enough to justify worry. The archers begin to set down their quivers. The knights shift in their saddles. One-foot soldier checks his boots and whispers, "Not now, lads, not now." His boots, it seems, have developed the unfortunate habit of squeaking when nervous. And in the middle of all this, amid the tension, the scanning eyes, the shifting formations, a donkey brays loudly and unexpectedly. Everyone jumps. Even the donkey looks startled. Laughter bubbles up in small bursts. Nervous, brief, but real. Because waiting for battle is a strange thing. You are told to prepare, to steel yourself. But often the enemy is just not there yet. Or they're there, but hiding or marching, or just as confused as you are. There are stories, many in fact, of battles that never happened because both sides stared at each other across a field until someone got tired and left, or because one side got the date wrong, or the wrong field, entirely. But for now, the possibility hangs in the air. Maybe they're there, maybe they're not. But the silence feels heavier. Every bird call, every rustle of wind in the trees, every distant snap of twig becomes a potential warning. Even the goat seems unusually still, and the men, they adjust their grips. They clear their throats. They pretend they aren't afraid. Because maybe, just maybe, today's fight is moments away, or maybe not. Maybe it's just more fog, more waiting, more whispered rumors passed back like bedtime stories. Either way, the horizon remains, still, shadowed, and full of stories. If you close your eyes and imagine a battlefield, what do you see? Armies clashing, banners fluttering, dust in the air and steel gleaming in the sun? That's sight. But tonight, we're going to talk about something else entirely. Smell. Yes. What did a battlefield actually smell like in the Middle Ages? Spoiler. It wasn't lavender. Let's start gently. Before a single sword was drawn, even before arrows flew or horses charged, there was already an aroma. And it wasn't victory. Imagine, first, the smell of the army camp itself. Thousands of men, packed tightly in tents, many of whom had not bathed properly in weeks. Armor traps sweat, wool traps moisture, and leather boots. Well, those become personalized swamps. The result is an atmosphere that can only be described as aggressively human. There's smoke from the cook fires, a dull, persistent fog of wood and ash and overcooked stew. Add to that the sharp tang of unwashed bodies, the rich pungency of foot rot, and the earthy perfume of whatever the horses have recently left behind. And remember, the latrines are just shallow pits dug in the ground, often overflowing, often ignored. Now imagine the wind changing direction. Suddenly, everything is closer. It's not terrible necessarily, at least not to the soldiers. They've adapted, but it is unforgettable. Once the army begins to march, the scent becomes more mobile. Sweaty backs, oiled metal, a hint of vinegar some men use to clean their weapons. And somewhere in the mix, the stubborn stink of boiled onions from breakfast, which has decided to cling to everyone like an overly affectionate dog. Then comes the battlefield proper, and the smells only deepen. The grass, trampled underfoot, releases a green bitterness. The mud, stirred into chaos, smells damp and ancient. When the first arrows fly, the scent of tension fills the air. It's not real, not chemical, but you can smell fear. Or maybe it's just the way fear makes everything smell sharper, more metallic. And then, as the fighting begins, new smells emerge. Hot iron, split wood, leather snapping, and blood. Yes, blood has a smell. It is coppery, sharp, a bit like a handful of old coins soaked in water. When spilled in large amounts, it mixes with soil to form a heavy, almost sticky scent. Some soldiers notice it, others don't. Adrenaline dulls the senses. But for those nearby, it's unmistakable. Sweat increases. Bodies collide, shields splinter. The battlefield becomes its own ecosystem of odor. There are smells of injury, torn flesh, bile, torn clothing, burning torches used to cauterize wounds. There are smells of desperation, dry mouths, wet armor, soiled trousers. Yes, it happens. More often than anyone would care to admit. And inevitably, there are the smells of death. But even here, let's be gentle. Because the dead do not smell immediately. It takes time. In the early hours, they are silent, still, carried on stretchers, or left where they fell. Their scent is not yet strong, but as the day drags on and the sun climbs higher, things change. The heat awakens the battlefield. Flies appear, like tiny black banners of defeat. The smell of blood thickens, metallic, and wet horse corpses begin to swell. Broken armor traps the warmth, creating little furnaces of decay. And still, the living move among it all. Some don't notice. Others flinch. A few find comfort in clove-soaked cloths tucked beneath their helmets. A little trick from apothecaries and priests. One knight, perhaps, carries a small orange stuffed with rosemary in his saddlebag. He raises it to his nose between charges. Not for vanity, but to remember something other than the moment he's in. There are records, strange, vivid ones, of soldiers dreaming about the smells long after the battle's end. A whiff of damp leather would make them flinch. The scent of roast meat might turn their stomachs. Because smell is memory's quiet twin, it sneaks into your thoughts when words fail. Even now, historians argue about the details of battles, but few question the reality of the scent. It was part of the experience, invisible but inescapable. Yet in the midst of it all, oddly, gently, there were strange comforts too. The sweet scent of crushed clover beneath a fallen shield, the surprising aroma of apples from a satchel torn open in the chaos, the warm, familiar smell of one's own horse, sweaty, but known. And yes, even the persistent garlic on a soldier's breath, a reminder that somewhere, in all this mess, there was still dinner, still life, still home. So when you imagine a battlefield, don't just picture it, try to smell it. Let the fog roll in, let the stew simmer, let the leather crack, let the wind shift. And remember, in that strange and wild place, where men fought and fell and feared, there were scents just as vivid, as sounds unseen, unsung, but unforgettable. Let us take a small step away from the clamor of swords and the stomping of hooves. Let us go instead to a quieter corner of the army, though no less important. The archers. They don't stand in shining armor. They don't ride into battle trumpeting their names. But they are, make no mistake, among the deadliest forces on the field, and also the clumsiest. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. The life of a medieval archer is a curious one. He is often lean, not because it helps with agility, but because food rations have been disappointing lately. His arms, however, are strong. In fact, an experienced longbowman's arms are famously misshapen, muscles built unevenly from years of pulling 100 to 150 pounds of draw weight. He carries not just a bow, but dozens of arrows, a small knife, a patch of wax for weatherproofing, and usually something lucky, a feather, a ribbon, a tiny carved rabbit that looks more like a potato. His bow is precious, often handmade, usually taller than he is. Yew wood, seasoned carefully, polished until it gleams. Each arrow, too, is a work of craft. Barbed heads for puncture, broadheads for slicing, bodkin tips for armor. But let us look not at their equipment, but their rhythm. When they line up, it's not with perfect symmetry. Some wear leather jerkins, others fight in tunics patched by their mothers. Their boots don't match. Their accents vary wildly. But when the command is given, knock, draw, loose, something beautiful happens. A woof of motion, the creak of strings, and then air hissing with purpose. Arrows fly, not one or two, but hundreds. A storm of feathered death, moving faster than the eye can follow. The sound they make is strange, soft, slicing, eerie, like the sky exhaling. Some archers close one eye, others squint. A few simply stare and hope. They don't aim like you think. There are no scopes, no sights, just instinct, experience, wind, gut feeling, and they practice. Oh, they practice. They shoot so often that their fingers blister, their shoulders ache. They sleep with dreams of bowstrings snapping and arrows curving just a bit too far left. And yes, they injure themselves, constantly. One fellow once braced his bow upside down and punched himself in the forehead. Another misfired during a demonstration and took down a tent pole. Even the best archers have off days. One memorable morning, 3 arrows flew straight up instead of out. No one knows exactly how. The entire squad ran in 3 directions at once, while one veteran calmly placed a helmet over a loaf of bread and called it sacrificial insurance. Then there are the misfires. Strings break, arrows snap. One man famously launched his quiver instead of his arrow. Another fired directly into his own foot. The arrow didn't stick, thankfully, but his pride took weeks to recover. Yet through all of this, archers are cherished. Trusted. Essential. Because they can shape a battlefield before the first sword is drawn. A well-timed volley can break a charge. A barrage from behind a hill can cause panic. A single arrow in the right place can change history. And they know this. That's why they stretch, why they whisper to their bows, why they test every arrowhead for balance, every fletching for drag. They are craftsmen, artists in their own way. And behind the gruffness and swearing and poorly tied shoelaces, they care, deeply, especially when their arrows strike true. You'll hear it. Not a cheer, but a low exhale. A moment of satisfaction. Then it's back to the rhythm. Knock. Draw. Loose. Knock. Draw. Loose. And as they fire, the battle continues around them. They see it all from a strange angle. They're not in the thick of the melee, but close enough to feel its pull. Close enough to know that each arrow might mean someone lives, or someone doesn't. They do not relish this, but they accept it. Some cope by counting. Others by humming. One archer recites recipes to calm himself. Today it's onion pie, and always there's the danger of friendly fire. In the chaos, miscalculations happen. More than one soldier has glanced over his shoulder just in time to shout, "Duck!" Sometimes, not in time. One poor knight lost a plume, not a head, and declared the archer who shot it a barber of incredible precision. Accidental or not, archers become both feared and gently teased. Watch your back and your front, goes the old infantry joke, especially when Thomas is on the string. And Thomas, bless him, always grins, because he knows his role, his worth. his weight in this dance of chaos and courage. So next time you imagine a battlefield, look past the swords and shields, find the archers, see the rows of weary, determined men and women, hands calloused, eyes sharp, and give a little smile, because someone out there is still pulling back a bowstring, whispering, "Just this once, let it fly straight." In theory, war is orderly, or so they say. There are maps and plans and formations, commands and signals and protocols. There's a sense, passed down in old books and battle songs, that a medieval army moved like a machine. Gears clicking in, harmony, soldiers responding like dancers to a silent rhythm. But if you've been following our story so far, you probably know by now. Theory and reality don't often share a bedroll, which brings us, rather delicately, to the matter of battlefield communication. Picture, if you will, a gently rising hill. The fog is lifting just enough for the faintest outline of trees to appear. In the foreground, a line of men stand gripping their weapons, staring nervously into the distance. Behind them, the mounted commander gestures to his trumpeter. The trumpeter nods, lifts his curved brass horn, takes a breath, and lets out the first signal, or tries to. The note cracks halfway through, comes out a bit like a hiccup followed by a goose honk. A nearby horse rears slightly, an archer ducks instinctively, and two infantrymen look at each other in utter confusion. "Was that the charge?" one asks. "Sounded more like 'prepare rations,'" the other replies. The drummer joins in, tapping out a steady rhythm on his war drum. Boom, 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 boom. This is supposed to mean, ready the left flank. But further down the line, the men assume it means, advance slowly, while someone near the rear mistakes it for form up in triangle formation. The triangle never quite forms. One side is entirely made of men who misheard the earlier trumpet and think they're supposed to stay behind and guard the stew, and the stew is very well guarded. Meanwhile, another trumpet sounds, from farther, off. This one is from the opposing side. It's louder, clearer, and somehow sounds far more confident. A sharp three-note blast. Our army reacts instantly with utter bewilderment. Is that their go signal? Do we respond? Maybe that was meant for us. The commander, now growing concerned, rides in a slow circle and shouts something encouraging. Unfortunately, the wind catches his words, turning them into, "Stand the gate," or possibly, "Sand the cake." No one's quite sure. At this point, the drummer panics slightly and begins a new rhythm. This one is faster, more urgent. Boom, 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 boom. It's intended to say, "Brace for charge," but now the line is thoroughly disjointed. The cavalry thinks it's time to flank. The archers think it's a fire warning, and the cook thinks someone wants seconds. Let's pause here to appreciate something important. Medieval battlefield communication was not designed for noise. Not the kind of noise made by thousands of nervous men in armor, neighing horses, rattling carts, flapping banners, clanking swords, sneezing donkeys, and the low but persistent buzz of anxiety. The human voice doesn't carry far, especially when muffled under a steel helmet or swallowed by wind. And while trumpets and drums were the best technology available for rapid commands, they were famously inconsistent. Volume varied, pitch varied, interpretation varied, and sometimes the musician simply sneezed mid-note. There's a story, probably apocryphal but too delightful not to tell, of a drummer who was so nervous before his first battle that he accidentally struck his drum in a pattern typically used during funerals. Half the soldiers assumed someone had died and sat down in prayer. The other half thought it meant retreat. Only one man moved forward, confidently swinging a chicken leg and declaring, "I go where the gods will. Back to our battle." The fog thickens briefly. One group of infantry, having lost sight of their own flag bearer, begins following the enemy's banner by mistake. They are halfway across the field before someone notices the emblem of a flaming boar, clearly not their own. They quietly retreat. No one mentions it again. In another section, a knight grows impatient with the noise and confusion. He raises his sword and yells, "To me, men! To me!" He is joined immediately by a small group of cooks, a stray dog, and one very confused crossbowman who thought this was a call for water carriers. The crossbowman offers a ladle. The knight nods graciously and uses it to point toward the hills. Amid all this, the original trumpeter, red-faced and determined, tries again. This time the note is pure, strong, triumphant, a single clarion call that sails across the battlefield like a swan in flight. Everyone hears it, everyone pauses, and everyone still doesn't know what it means. But that doesn't matter, because in that moment, with drums pounding and banners flapping and boots squelching through the churned-up mud, something wonderful happens. The army moves forward, not perfectly, not in perfect formation, but together. The noise doesn't matter anymore, because when battle begins, the sounds fade into instinct. You follow the man beside you. You watch the wind in the flags. You listen not for orders, but for rhythm, of motion, of breath, of trust. And somehow, it works. Not always cleanly, not without mishap, but it works. The trumpeter lowers his horn. The drummer slows his beat, and in the distance the clash begins, not with a roar but with 100 careful steps forward, in confusion, in courage, in the shared music of men doing their best. There is a peculiar stillness right before things begin. Not the stillness of peace, but of something else. A kind of tight, unblinking pause, as though the world has inhaled deeply and forgotten how to let the breath out. The battlefield is quiet. Not silent, mind you. There are still sounds, the creak of saddles, the rustle of mail shirts, the sniffles of cold noses, the occasional soft curse as someone adjusts a strap that has, once again, pinched them somewhere most unhelpful. But in this moment, none of the usual camp chatter remains. Everyone is watching, because up ahead through the thinning morning fog, something is starting to shift. It begins with a shimmer, a shape in the distance that wasn't there before. Or perhaps it was always there and the mist has finally decided to give us a better look. Someone sees it first, points, doesn't speak, just points. Then others look, and yes, there they are. The enemy, not charging, not shouting, just standing. Rows of them, motionless at least from this distance, like painted figurines left behind by a careless god. Their colors are different. Their armor shapes, their banners, even their posture. But it doesn't matter. What matters is, they are real now, no longer rumor. And suddenly, the long wait becomes something sharper. It's no longer if, it's when. In every army, there is a strange collection of minds. Some men, upon seeing the enemy, feel a jolt of adrenaline. They grip their weapons tighter. They square their shoulders and whisper prayers or jokes. Others go quiet, their eyes flicking from shape to shape, calculating, remembering, hoping. Then there are the ones who simply blink, not out of shock, but because they forgot to blink. Earlier, and their eyes have dried in the cold. Among the knights, a few shift their weight in the saddle. Horses snort and paw the ground. They too feel it, the energy in the air, the heaviness of it. An old war horse named Marmalade sneezes explosively, scattering tension for a few seconds as the nearby infantry flinch. One of the squires drops a helmet. It rolls several feet downhill, clanging softly. No one retrieves it. They're all too busy staring ahead. Then, just when the stillness becomes too much, when the waiting stretches so long it feels unbearable, movement begins. Not from your side, from theirs. A banner lifts, wavers. A horse steps forward, then another, and then, just barely, just softly, comes the first sound of real contact. An arrow, launched not with ceremony, but almost carelessly. No one is sure if it was on purpose, but it sails lazily through the air, arches high and lands somewhere between the two forces, harmlessly embedding itself in the soft ground. Everyone sees it. No one moves. Then, another arrow. Then 2 more. Then, 10. Now it's official. There is no trumpet this time. No speech. Just that unmistakable truth. It has begun. The archers move first. Always the archers. Not with flair, but with practice. They lift their bows, notch their arrows, draw. Some wait for a command. Others decide not to bother. A volley is loosed. The sound it makes is not dramatic. It's a whisper, a flutter, a passing breeze full of deadly intentions. And then, response. The enemy looses their arrows. You can see them now, if you look carefully. Tiny. Shapes moving with mechanical certainty. Overhead the sky seems to buzz. Some men duck, others raise shields. A few simply close their eyes. An arrow strikes a tree nearby with a satisfying thunk. Another lands tip first in someone's soup pot, now abandoned. And then, at last, comes the sound that signals the next phase. Boots. Marching. Heavy. Uneven. Unmistakable. Your side begins to move, not fast, not clean, but forward. One step. Two. The mud sucks at your boots. The line holds mostly. A few men trip, catch themselves, keep going. Knights shift their lances. Squires try to keep up, their satchels bouncing. Somewhere a horn finally sounds, but no one's listening to it anymore. Because now, it's real. The distance between you and them shrinks with every step. And with that shrinking distance, thought disappears. There's no room for it, only sensation, the weight of your shield, the slippery grip of your sword, the tightness in your chest. The strange way sound seems both too loud and too far away. Your name, shouted by someone, you can't tell who. A bird overhead, just one, flying quickly away. And the feeling, not of panic, but of inevitability. This, is it first contact? When you are close enough to see faces, close enough to see that the enemy has eyes, and breath, and sweat, close enough to realize they look a lot like you. And yet, neither of you stops, because this is what has been set in motion. By orders, by duty, by ancient rules written in old languages, or perhaps by nothing more than the stubborn momentum of frightened people trying not to be frightened. The clash is coming. But for now, you are just walking toward it, trying to remember how to breathe, trying not to think about what comes next, trying to keep one foot moving after the other. You pass the arrow stuck in the earth, it's still quivering. So are you. And it's okay. Everyone is. It's easy to imagine the clash as a moment of thunder, steel on steel, men roaring, horses rearing, dust flying in cinematic slow motion. But in truth, it doesn't feel like thunder. It feels like stumbling, like slipping on wet stone while carrying something heavy, like waking up too quickly and realizing the day has already begun without you. Let's start gently. The first clash is not between weapons, it's between bodies. Men running forward, colliding not with forceful swings of swords, but with the sheer weight of each other. Shoulders slam, knees hit knees, and the noise is not glorious. It is clumsy. It is the sound of grunts, of armor grinding, of boots losing traction in mud. One man is knocked off balance before he even lifts his shield. Another raises his spear and catches a faceful of another man's helmet by accident. There is chaos, yes, but not elegant chaos. More like a disorganized festival where no one got the map. Let's meet someone. Thomas. He's a carpenter by trade, never swung a sword before this campaign. They gave him a pike and a pep talk. Neither prepared him for what he's now experiencing. His hands are shaking, not from fear, at least not entirely, from cold, from exertion, from disbelief. His first clash comes when another soldier, friend or foe he isn't sure, bumps into him hard enough to make his helmet spin slightly. He adjusts it, just in time to block something. Maybe a stick, maybe a sword. It's hard to tell. His arm vibrates with the impact. He doesn't remember lifting it. Nearby, someone screams. It's not a dramatic, echoing battle cry. It's a stubbed toe in the dark scream, short, confused, high-pitched. A man has twisted his ankle, not heroically. He simply stepped into a hole. The clash at this stage is a mess. Weapons are raised but rarely strike cleanly. Shields are lifted, then dropped. Swords tangle in cloaks. A knight, gallantly charging forward, is brought to a full stop by a tree root. He topples sideways with the elegance of a falling bookshelf. No one laughs. Not because it's not funny, but because laughter requires air, and there isn't much of that, because when the clash begins, breathing becomes a task. Helmets stifle, armor presses. Your chest, tight with adrenaline, forgets the rhythm of inhale and exhale. You gasp in metal-filtered gulps. You blink sweat from your eyes. You wipe your nose on your sleeve without thinking. Then comes noise. But not the noble roar you'd expect. It's uneven. A man shouting instructions, another shouting the opposite, a horse braying in protest, the repeated thud of something hitting something else. Most men don't shout words. They grunt, groan, snarl. The human voice under pressure becomes something ancient. Thomas swings. He misses. He swings again, connects. He doesn't know with what. He doesn't stop to check. He steps, slips, recovers. Someone pushes past him. Someone falls beside him. He keeps moving. Because if you stop, you become scenery. Clash becomes current. You are carried forward, or backward, or sideways, and always, always, you're looking for space. Not to strike, to breathe, to think, to remember who you are. Let's move to the archers. They're still firing, but now their targets are obscured. They aim less by sight, more by rhythm. Knock, draw, loose. They do not shout. They focus. Their arrows whistle. Overhead some finding marks, others not. A few soldiers flinch as the shafts pass too close. One man is struck in the boot. It sticks into the leather. He doesn't notice. Not yet. Because in a clash, sensation narrows. You don't feel everything. Just the essential things. Weight. Pressure. Balance. Sound becomes selective. You hear the clang of your own weapon, but not the commander's voice. You hear your own breath, but not your friend falling beside you. And in the midst of it all, time changes. Moments stretch. Others vanish. 1 second, you're raising your arm. The next, you're 3 paces back, sword gone, someone's elbow in your ribs. How did it happen? You don't know. No one does. That's the truth of the clash. It's not a battle. It's a blur, a collection of close calls, half thoughts and movements repeated from instinct, not instruction. Somewhere, a trumpet sounds. Not the beginning. Not the end. Just another sound in the soup of everything. Thomas is still upright, still breathing, still clutching his pike like a walking stick. And when the wave of movement finally pauses, just for a heartbeat, he sees something. A man across from him, the enemy. They lock eyes, not with hatred, with exhaustion, recognition. Both are red-faced, filthy, panting. Both nod faintly. Then the moment ends, and the clash surges again. But for that one breath, one heartbeat, one blink, there is no glory, no victory, only 2 tired people, each trying to stay upright in the tide. You might think the sound of battle is simple, loud, but simple. Swords clashing, men shouting, hooves thundering across the field. But the truth is, sound during a medieval battle is a strange, tangled thing. A collage of noises that don't quite fit together. A choir of chaos where every voice sings in a different key. And it doesn't start all at once. No, it begins in little pieces. First, the clink of armor. Before weapons even meet, you hear hundreds of little metallic whispers, mail shirts shifting, gauntlets creaking, buckles clicking. The prelude to violence is fussy. Then come the boots. Not stomping, not marching, just squelching. Through mud, through grass, through places where water has collected inconveniently. You hear feet slip, boots squeak. A soldier curses his left soul for betraying him. And then at last, the clash begins, and the noises bloom. You expect the sound of swords. You get it, but not like in the stories. Real swords don't always ring like church bells. They scrape. They thud. They make a dry, unpleasant clack when they miss and hit wood or bone or simply the ground. Shields sound worse. When struck, they vibrate with a hollow bang, like someone slapping a metal drum full of potatoes. The men make noises too. The noble war cries of poets, but yelps, grunts, groans. A man blocks a blow and lets out a laugh, not from confidence but surprise. Another screams, not from injury, but because someone stepped on his toe. Some shout words, some shout nonsense. One man yells his own name over and over again like it might protect him. Another sings, badly, a verse from a tavern song about ale and trousers. It is not in tune. No, one tells him to stop, and then there are the sounds no one prepares you for. The accidental ones. The gasp of a soldier who forgot to breathe. The wheeze of a knight whose armor is just slightly too tight across the ribs. The repeated clinking of a loose buckle. The embarrassing toot of someone who swung too hard and lost more than just their balance. And horses. Let's not forget the horses. They neigh, they scream, they snort like dragons with hay fever. They stomp, not in unison, but with desperate rhythm. Hoofbeats that beat out a nervous song against the earth. Some rear, some shy away from puddles. One lies down entirely, having decided that today is not worth the trouble. Even the birds get involved. A crow, startled by a trumpet, flies directly into a banner. Feathers flutter. A soldier ducks instinctively, shouting, "They've got flying things." Then comes laughter. Yes, laughter soft, scattered, unexpected. Because in the middle of all the fear and adrenaline and noise, people are still people. A sword gets stuck in a tree. A knight falls backwards into a bush. Two men from opposing sides stop mid-swing to stare at a goat that has wandered between them, bleeding with righteous fury. They lower their weapons. Let the goat pass, then resume. And still, the noises go on. Breath, heavy, uneven, armor rubbing, leather creaking, fabric tearing, a drum beating from somewhere, off rhythm but determined, a horn blast, too late to be helpful, and over all of it, a kind of hum, not musical, but constant, the hum of fear, of motion, of too many people thinking too many things all at once. And when the fighting pauses, because it does sometimes, it doesn't go silent. It sags, the sounds lower, but they don't. Vanish. You hear coughing, swearing, crying, praying, a man retching quietly into the grass, someone shouting a name, someone else asking softly, "Did we win yet?" There are no clear answers, only more noise, and eventually more motion, because battles move like storms, loud, unpredictable, full of gusts and lulls. You are never sure what's coming next, but you hear it before you see it. Always. A rumble. Scuffle. A warning shouted from someone far off, and the battle resumes. Thomas, the carpenter, is still upright. He's learned to recognize sounds now. The rhythm of a good block. The strange, hollow ring of a sword hitting empty air. The chuckle of the archer who keeps hitting tree trunks instead of targets. These sounds aren't just background. They're companions. Signals. Reminders that he's still here. Still part of the story. So when you imagine a medieval battle, don't picture it. Listen to it. To the footfalls and metal, to the shouting and silence, to the laughter, the wheezing, the too honest swearing. Because in the end, the strange sounds of the fight tell the real story, not of glory, but of people, trying, failing, laughing, breathing, alive, amid the noise. They say the line must be held. Every commander says it. Every knight repeats it. Every speech, every scroll, every carved relief in stone halls shows rows of men standing firm, shoulder to shoulder, like walls of willpower. But what they don't often show is how hard that really is, and what it feels like from inside the line, especially when pain enters the picture. Let's start small, not with mortal wounds or glorious last stands. Let's begin with a stubbed toe, or a twisted ankle, or a spear, handle rammed unexpectedly into the stomach by your friend in the row behind you who misjudged his swing. That sort of pain, the kind that doesn't kill, but takes your attention completely. You're in the thick of it now. The clash is in full swing. You've lost track of how long it's been. 5 minutes? 15? An hour? Time no longer behaves. Your arms ache. Your back stings. Your legs feel like bread dough. And then suddenly you take a blow. Not to the head, not to the heart, to the shin. A solid whack. Not heroic. Just painful, sharp, electric, surprising. And you yell, not in fury, but in sheer, ow, that was my leg, honesty. Now your focus is split. Half of you is still in the fight. The other half is wondering if your shin is supposed to feel warm, and yet, you don't stop. You don't leave. You grit your teeth and keep the line. Because behind you is someone else. And beside you, someone you know, or maybe not. But in this moment, you lean into each other, because leaning is all you've got. Panic, though. Panic is trickier. It doesn't arrive all at once. It sneaks in. You see it in eyes. A glance to the left, then to the right. Are we surrounded? Is anyone else still standing? You hear a scream. You don't know whose. You hear the word, retreat. Once, faintly. You pretend you didn't, because if you acknowledge it, it becomes real. And once panic takes root, it grows fast. A man drops his weapon. Another stumbles and doesn't rise. A gap opens in the line, just a small one. But it's enough. You feel it. The current shifts. You could run. Right now you could turn and go. No one would blame you. Probably. Maybe. But you stay. Not out of courage. Not even loyalty. But because your feet refuse to move. And because the one next to you hasn't run either. So you wait. And breathe. And shout something. Anything. Push left. Or maybe it was watch step. It doesn't matter. The sound helps. You strike again, and miss, and try again, and somehow the line doesn't break. Not because it's strong, but because everyone agrees, silently, to be weak together. Let's pause. Here and meet Marjorie. Yes, that's her name. She's wearing armor borrowed from her uncle. It doesn't fit quite right. She carries a short sword she found in a ditch last week. She's terrified. But she's still here. A man rushes her. She ducks. He trips over her. She falls too. Both lie there for a moment, blinking. Then they scramble to their feet and run in opposite directions. No one records this moment. No bard sings of it. But it mattered. Because in that moment, Marjorie chose not to lie there. She got up. She rejoined the line. Not because she wanted to, but because the line still existed, and because someone shouted her name. And that was enough. Pain continues. In blisters, in raw shoulders, in throbbing wrists, in bruises that will bloom like purple flowers tomorrow, if there is a tomorrow. But pain, strangely, becomes part of the rhythm, a reminder that you're still here, still in it, still able to feel. Panic still whispers, but so does something else, a kind of music, not from instruments, but from the bodies beside you, from the way they shift, the way they breathe, the way they don't give up. And slowly, slowly, the fear becomes less sharp. Still there, but quieter, because the line holds, wobbles, but holds, not out of might, but out of mutual agreement not to fall all at once. You feel someone grab your shoulder, not to pull you back, to steady themselves. You nod, they nod, and you both look forward. Again, the fight still rages, but the line is still here, which means so are you. There comes a point in every battle, after the swinging, after the shouting, after the panic, where time seems to lose interest. It slows. It forgets to tick. You look around, dazed, blinking sweat and dust from your eyes, and wonder, Did we win? Are we losing? Is it over? Or is this just the quiet before something worse? Victory and defeat in the world of medieval warfare are not tidy things. They do not arrive like messengers on horseback, clearly marked and easy to spot. They creep in, slowly, often without you noticing. Let's start with the obvious signs. Sometimes you look up and the enemy is running. That feels like a win, unless they're running in your direction, then less so. Other times it's your own side that starts to move back. Not fleeing, not quite, just moving. One step, two. Then someone yells, fall back, or maybe reform, or maybe just duck. And you realize, with sinking certainty, that the line isn't holding anymore. But most of the time it's not that clear. The dust is too thick, the shouting too mixed, the banners too far away or already on the ground. You try to find someone in command. You can't. You try to count how many are left beside you. You can't. All you really know is that you're still standing. And for the moment, that's enough. Let's meet Jeffrey. He's a baker. Or was, until he was handed a helmet and a pointy stick. He doesn't know if his side is winning. He knows only that he's tired. He's lost one shoe. He's gained a small cut on his chin. He's fairly certain his shirt is on backwards. But he's still here. He looks left, sees someone he knows. That man nods. He nods back. And then, over the din, a horn sounds. Not sharp, not urgent, but long, drawn out. Low, somewhere, a signal. Withdraw, or regroup, or finish. No one's quite sure, but something changes. The clash loosens, hands lower, weapons drop, not thrown down, just dropped. Softly, reluctantly, like falling leaves. No one cheers. Not yet. Because no one knows what just happened. What was gained, what was lost, what lines held, and which ones buckled. Because in the heat of it all, memory blurs. You forget where you stood. You forget how you moved. You forget whether you hit or blocked, or simply stood still while others did the fighting around you. But the signs begin to appear. Men limping. Some sitting, heads down, too tired to speak. A squire leading a horse without a rider. A knight kneeling beside his own shadow, whispering, something only he can hear. The field is quieter now, still not silent, but the volume has dimmed. What was once roar is now murmur. Soft footfalls, low voices, the occasional clang of a dropped weapon hitting stone. And over it all, a question. Was that victory? Some believe so. They point to where the enemy once stood. Empty now. Others shake their heads. Too many fallen, too many good men unaccounted for. And so the field becomes a place of reckoning. Not celebration, not yet, but counting. Searching, caring. You help someone sit. You bring water. You look for a friend. You look again and again. Somewhere, someone is crying. Not loudly. Just softly, as if the tears have waited all day for permission to fall. And now that the swords have stopped, they have found their moment. And then, when you least expect it, comes laughter. Small at first. Someone remembers something ridiculous, an arrow that hit a loaf of bread instead of an enemy. Commander who tripped over his own flag. A man who fought an entire skirmish with a bucket on his head, and the laughter spreads. Not because the day was good, but because the body needs to release something. Grief. Relief. Whatever it is. It finds its way out through breath and sound and shared glances that say, we made it. Some of us anyway. We're still here. And that counts for something. Eventually, someone declares the outcome, not with fanfare, just a sentence, a nod, a message passed from one tired group to another. It's done, and that's all. Victory, maybe defeat. Perhaps, but most of all, something in between. A gray place where survivors rest, where the ground is still warm from the clash, where the sky remains unchanged, and where for now it is enough simply to be. There are things that only make themselves known after the battle ends. You don't see them during the fighting. You're too busy gripping your weapon, watching your feet, watching the blur of movement in front of you, praying, thinking, shouting, forgetting to think again. But when the noise fades, when the dust begins to settle, when the air begins to feel like air again, you start to notice them. The first thing is silence. Not complete silence. There are always the usual sounds: groans, coughing, the rattle of armor, the wind gently remembering how to move. But compared to the chaos of before, it feels like silence, and it's startling. You might hear your own breath for the first time in hours. You might hear birdsong, a tiny chirp from somewhere overhead, as if a sparrow has returned to take roll call. You might hear your heartbeat, not pounding anymore, but steady. Then, you begin to see things, not dramatic things, little ones. A pair of gloves someone dropped, now half buried in dirt. A broken sword, the blade snapped in two like dry bread. A helmet sitting neatly on a stump as if placed there with care. No one knows who left it or why. But it's there. Then the smells change. During the battle, your nose shuts down. It has to. There's too much going on. But now the world opens again. You smell the earth, not just the blood or the smoke, but the real earth beneath all that. Grass, crushed under boots, mud, freshly stirred, ash from fires that burned too fast, and too hot, and strangely bread. Someone somewhere is already cooking again, because hunger, like time, doesn't pause for war. You begin to notice your body. It returns to you slowly, like a dog you forgot you owned. You feel aches in places you didn't know existed. You lift your arm and realize how heavy it feels. Your legs tremble, not from fear now, but from simple exhaustion. One man discovers a bruise on his shoulder the size of a soup bowl. He has no idea when it happened. Another finds a cut along his cheek, thin and stinging, but not deep. He only notices it because someone points it out. You look at your hands. They're dirty, crusted with mud, and maybe more. But they still work. You flex your fingers and watch them move like old hinges. Still here, still yours. And now, the people around you begin to shift. They move differently now, no longer urgent. They move like tired travelers at the end of a long road. Some sit where they stood. Others lean against trees, walls, or one another. A few lie flat in the grass, arms spread wide as if surrendering to the sky. You notice faces, eyes wide. Not from terror, but from the simple disbelief that it's over. Some blink a lot, like the world is too bright. Others don't blink at all. One man is still holding his sword like he's in the middle of a strike. No one tells him to lower it. Eventually, he does on his own. You hear voices again. Soft ones. Questions. Did you? See what happened to James? Where's the captain? Anyone got water? And answers or half answers. I think he was over by the ridge. I saw her earlier helping someone. No, but I've got a bit of cider left. And then? The laughter returns. Gentle, real, not to mock, not to celebrate, but because people are funny, even now. Especially now. A knight realizes he's been dragging a tent pole instead of his lance. A footman finds a chicken nesting inside his shield. An archer complains loudly that the only thing he hit all day was a cooking pot, and even that was his own. And through it all, you begin to feel human again. Not a soldier, not a name in someone else's story, just yourself. A little bruised, a little dazed, but breathing, alive. And that's when you notice something else. The quiet kindnesses, a bandage shared without words, a cloak draped over, sleeping shoulders, two hands lifting someone too tired to stand. The way people, even after all the noise, still find their way back to each other, still offer warmth, still remember that war doesn't erase care. In fact, it makes it more visible, more urgent, more tender. There's an old saying that you never know the shape of a battle until the day after. But really, the shape comes in these little things. What you don't notice until it's over. The extra blanket, the arm around a shoulder, The water skin passed silently between cracked lips, the quiet voice saying, "You did well. Even if you didn't swing, even if you just stood, even if you just stayed, it was enough." So when the field finally empties, when the last cart rolls away and the last flag is folded and the last soldier limps back to camp, what's left behind is not just debris, it's memory, etched into the grass, pressed into the soil, not of how the battle looked, but how it felt, and what it left behind. In the spaces we almost missed. The field, once full of shouting and motion and panic, is now something else entirely. It is not quiet, not exactly, but the sounds that remain are soft. The murmurs of those who walk slowly now, heads down. The shuffle of boots across churned soil. The distant clatter of carts somewhere back near the tree line. And the wind. That same wind that was once filled with arrows and banners now moves freely again. It carries only the scent of ash and iron and broken grass. This is the field after the battle, and it does not celebrate. It breathes, not deeply, just enough to say, the worst has passed. For now, let's walk through it together, step by step, careful, not to trip on the things war leaves behind. There are weapons here, everywhere, some still in hand, others scattered, discarded, blades half buried in dirt, spears snapped clean in two, their shafts pointing nowhere, arrows like thorns, some lodged in stumps, others in earth, some still humming faintly from the wind. You see a shield lying face down, its emblem smudged beyond recognition. You flip it over. On the back, a name scratched in with a dull knife. Just a name. No title. No motto. Just a name. Nearby, someone kneels. Not in prayer exactly. Just resting, or remembering, or trying to understand where his boots are, because one is missing. His face is tired, but not sad. He's in that strange place between thought and sleep. Let's walk a bit further. There are bodies. Yes, not all. Some have been taken. Some have risen and walked away, but some remain. And here's the truth. They are not dramatic. They do not look like paintings. They look like people. Sleeping. Some curled up as if seeking warmth, some outstretched as though reaching, some still clutching their weapons, some holding nothing. You see faces. Older than you expected, younger than you'd hoped, some peaceful, some confused, some caught in expressions you can't quite read, but all still, and around them, signs of care. Someone has placed a handkerchief over a face. Someone else tied a ribbon to a hilt, perhaps so they could find it later. Perhaps just because further down the field you pass a horse, it stands tethered loosely, chewing on grass. Its eyes are calm, its rider is gone, but the horse waits, because that's what horses do. You nod to it. It flicks its ears. No judgment, just presence. There's a broken cart nearby, its wheels bent. A pot hangs from one side, still swinging faintly. Inside, remarkably, a few biscuits, untouched. You wonder who packed them. You wonder if they made it home. You don't know, and you won't. But for a moment, you smile. Because it's absurd, and real, and somehow tender. A biscuit, surviving a battlefield. Imagine that. Then, as you near the center of the field, you notice something else. Silhouettes. Moving slowly. Some carrying stretchers. Others with shovels. Some just looking for friends, for answers, for closure. They speak in hushed tones. They kneel. They touch earth, or stone, or a dropped scarf. Some cry. Others don't. But all of them are part of this strange ritual. This quiet claiming of space. This moment, where the field begins to shift from a place of war to a place of memory. You walk among them, not as a hero, not as a ghost, but as someone still here, still breathing. And the field, as brutal as it was hours ago, now lets you pass without protest. Its rage spent, its secrets half buried, half told. You find a flag in the mud. Not yours. You clean it gently. The cloth is torn, but the color shows through. Bright, hopeful somehow. You don't know where to put it, so you fold it and keep it, just in case someone asks, just in case it matters, as the sun begins to drop. The shadows stretch long. They fall over everything, over shields and swords, over the still and the standing. But it doesn't feel ominous. It feels quiet, earned. The field doesn't roar now. It exhales, and in that long, soft breath you realize something simple. Survival is not just staying alive. It is walking this field, not turning away, not pretending it was something else, but seeing it, all of it. The mess, the mercy, the biscuits, the horse, the people, and letting yourself feel, just for a moment, how strange it is to still be standing. The camp after battle is not the same camp that existed before it. It looks similar, yes. The tents are still there, some a little slumped, some torn at the seams. The fires still smoke, and the pots still bubble, and the animals still shuffle, their hooves impatiently. But something is different, something quiet, something heavy. Before the battle, the camp was noisy in a particular way, rattling armor, laughter too loud, people shouting instructions no one listened to. Now, the noise is softer, not silence. Never silence, but gentle. Low voices, metal on metal, but without urgency. Spoons and bowls, hands folding cloth, feet on dirt, slow and dragging. The first thing most soldiers do after battle is sit. Not lie down, not stretch or wash or speak. Just sit, like someone has pulled the key from their back and let the tension unwind. Some sit alone, some in small clusters, a few in strange places, on overturned carts, on the edges of fire pits, even in someone else's tent. They don't always notice where they are, they're just sitting. And in this stillness, small things begin again. A squire unbuckles a greave. The leather creaks. He removes it gently, like unwrapping a gift. Inside, the soldier's leg is bruised a deep purple, but not broken. The squire nods once, doesn't speak, just moves to the other leg. Repairs begin slowly. Not the grand rebuilding of walls and siege towers. Little repairs. A torn sleeve is stitched. A helmet dented in is gently hammered back into shape over a stump. Arrows are gathered from the ground, examined one by one. Some will fly again. Others will become firewood. There's a rhythm to it. The gentle clink of tools. The whispered requests. Pass the needle. Hold this. That one's still sharp. No one shouts. Not tonight. And nearby the healers do their work. They don't wear white robes. They don't glow. They are tired men and women with rough hands and sharper eyes. They move from person to person like ghosts with purpose. Cleaning, binding, sometimes just touching a shoulder and saying, "Not deep, you'll be fine," and sometimes saying nothing at all, because not all wounds bleed. Some sit silently, backs hunched, hands motionless, eyes looking somewhere else entirely. Grief comes in many forms. For some, it is loud, a cry into the night, a name shouted, a sudden kick of a helmet that will never be worn again. But more often, it's quiet. A man stirring soup he won't eat. A woman sewing a tear in a tunic that belonged to someone who isn't coming back. A lad holding a dog tag, turning it over and over, like the motion alone will bring clarity. No one tells these people what to do. There's no script for this, no proper ritual. Grief is allowed to roam, allowed to stretch its legs and settle down wherever it pleases. Some try to busy themselves, fixing armor, sharpening blades, stacking wood. It's not just for utility. It's because motion is easier than memory. One knight polishes his boots for an hour. They don't need it. He doesn't notice. He just keeps going until someone gently takes the cloth from his hand and says, "Rest." He nods, doesn't move, and keeps polishing. And yet, amid all of this, life returns, not with fireworks, but with warmth. A pot of soup passed around. Someone adds herbs. Another stirs. A song, half sung, half hummed, emerges near one of the fires. A lullaby. Someone joins in. Someone else whistles the tune. It's off-key. No one minds. The firelight flickers on tired faces, not triumphant faces, just alive ones. One man tells a joke. It's not funny, but it is familiar, and that's enough. Someone laughs. Someone else rolls their eyes. Someone offers bread. And for a moment, it almost feels like nothing happened. Almost. But then you glance toward the row of empty tents, and remember, and so do they. That's the strange duality of the camp after battle. It mourns, and it mends. It weeps, and it stirs stew. It holds sorrow in one hand and a whetstone in the other, because life insists on continuing, even through pain, especially through pain. And in the soft noises of this evening, thread through cloth, wood on fire, quiet footsteps, you hear it. Not victory, not celebration, but resilience. Thin, wavering, but real, like a candle left burning through the storm, still flickering, still warm, still here. After the tents are patched, the wounds are wrapped, and the soup has gone lukewarm, another part of the battle begins. Not a loud one, not one of metal or movement, but of memory. People begin to speak, not in speeches, in scraps, in muttered sentences, while stirring coals, in quiet stories told with backs against barrels and knees tucked to chests, and most of all, in letters. They are written slowly, clumsily, by firelight, by moonlight, by lantern oil saved for just such nights. Some don't write much, just a few words. I'm alive, still here. Love to all. Others write more. Pages sometimes, not to boast, but to empty something out. A heaviness that's easier to send away on paper than to hold inside. Let's sit with one such writer. His name is Edwin. He's got bad handwriting, but he tries his best. His quill scratches against rough parchment stolen from the quartermaster's stores. He chews his lip, then writes, "Dearest Helen, the fighting is done for now. We held the hill, though I'm not quite sure how. It was muddy, loud. I saw a man fall asleep while standing. Truly. He swayed like a willow and didn't fall until someone nudged him. I think he dreamed of bread." He smiles at that memory, even if it wasn't quite true. The man had dozed, yes, but only for a second. Still, it makes a better story this way. He continues, "I lost a button but kept my hat. Your ribbon is still tied to it. It brought luck, I think, or at least comfort." He doesn't write about the worst parts. Not tonight. He doesn't mention the scream he still hears in his ear, or the friend he didn't find after the smoke cleared. Those will come later, or maybe never, because letters home serve a strange purpose. They aren't always about telling the truth. Sometimes, they're about telling a version of the truth that makes sense, or feels survivable, or simply sounds better in ink. Elsewhere, someone is telling a story aloud. A group has gathered around a fire. It started with someone asking, "Did you see what happened near the creek?" Now it's a tale about a lone soldier who held off 5 men, or maybe it was 3, or maybe it wasn't alone. But the story grows. It takes shape. Faces change, details drift. A horse becomes a mule, a stumble becomes a charge, a scream becomes a song, and no one corrects it, because that's how stories work. They aren't history, they're balm. They fill in the places where memory is too sore to tread. They offer shape to shapelessness. And sometimes, they make us feel brave, even when we weren't, especially when we weren't. Marjorie, who barely remembers the fight beyond falling once and coughing for 10 minutes straight, now finds herself in someone's story. They say she saved a squire. Someone murmurs. Marjorie blinks. She didn't. Not that she recalls. But maybe she helped someone up. Maybe that counts. She doesn't correct them. She just pulls her blanket closer and listens. And then there are the lies. Not cruel ones. Gentle ones. Told not to deceive, but to comfort. Your brother fought well. He smiled at the end. He wasn't alone. These words aren't always true. But they are kind, and sometimes kindness is more useful than accuracy, especially in grief. Letters continue, folded, sealed, passed to messengers. Some never arrive. Others arrive months later, tattered, smudged, smelling of wax and rain. But when they do, they matter. A mother reads one and presses it to her chest. A child holds it under a pillow. A friend copies the words, then places the original in a wooden box. Words become anchors, tethers to something solid, something survivable. Back in camp, Edwin finishes his letter. He signs his name, then adds after a pause, P.S. If I come back with a limp, tell everyone it was from wrestling a bear, or falling heroically, but not from tripping on a turnip cart, which is the truth, and undignified. He smiles, folds the paper, tucks it into his satchel. Nearby, someone else is sketching, not well, but with heart. A crooked drawing of a battlefield, more meadow than mayhem, a knight with 2 long legs, a tent with flowers beside it. The sketcher shrugs. Why not? History will tell the rest differently, with more blood, with fewer biscuits. But here in this camp, the first stories are already taking shape. Soft, sweetened, human, not perfect, but true enough. You'd think after a battle people would be eager to leave. And yes, in some ways they are. Eager to be gone from mud and wounds and memories that still taste like smoke. Eager for soft beds, for warm bread, for faces that don't belong to, comrades or ghosts. But leaving is not simple, it never is. Because when the fight is over, when the banners come down, when the letters are sealed and the dead are named, what's left must still be carried. Let's begin with the obvious. The geared armor, dented and muddied, weapons dulled and notched, blankets, cloaks, belts, boots, none of it new, some of it no longer useful. But people carry it anyway, not because they expect another battle, but because packing it up feels like packing up the experience itself. A sword with a cracked hilt. It saved a life once. It will never cut again. But still, into the satchel it goes. A helm with a dent from a wayward stone, too tight, too heavy. But someone writes their name inside and slings it over their shoulder, because it means something now. Next come the stranger things. A small charm, carved from wood. A gift from a child before the march. Worn around the neck, kissed before battle. It's going home. A scrap of cloth torn from a fallen friend's cloak. Folded neatly, tucked into a pouch with quiet reverence. A ladle. Yes, a ladle. Found, on the field, bent sideways. Someone picks it up, laughs softly and says, "We'll fix it." And into the cart it goes. But beyond the physical, people carry more. Things not tied down. Things not made of metal or wool. Things harder to name. Memories. Some are sharp. Too sharp. They arrive uninvited in the early hours of morning when the campfire is low and the world is too quiet. A voice. A scream. The color of someone's eyes just before they closed. Others are softer. The way a comrade held their shield. The feel of mud underfoot just before the charge. The warm, ridiculous joy of finding your shoe after thinking it lost forever. These memories are stitched into the skin. Carried without effort. Carried forever. Then there's guilt. Oh yes. Survivor's guilt, they call it now. But in those days there was no name for it, only the question, Why me? Why not him? Why not her? The unspoken weight of having lived. It doesn't arrive right away. It waits. It hides behind laughter, behind the clatter of wheels, behind the song sung to keep the walking steady. But it's there, a small stone in the boot of the soul, pressing, reminding, not punishing, just present. And also, surprisingly, people carry joy. Strange but true. Moments that sparkle, the joke told in the trench, the song hummed while patching armor, the look two soldiers shared when they both realized they were still alive. Not grand joy, not celebration, just joy, small and warm and stubborn, the kind that insists on surviving even when nothing else does. Let's walk with a small group heading home. They are tired, sore, blistered, but walking. One pulls a cart. Another carries 2 swords, one hers, one a friend's. A third has a kitten in his bag. He says he found it in the wreckage. It has 1 eye and a crooked tail. It sleeps soundly. They talk little, but when they do, it's about food. What they'll eat first. Bread with real butter. Pears, soaked in wine. Stew that isn't mostly onion skin. They talk about beds, real beds, and boots that don't squeak, and soap. One man swears he'll bathe for a full day. Another swears he never wants to see a sword again. They laugh, not loudly, but with breath, and you can feel it. They are carrying hope. Not just memories, not just wounds, but the quiet belief that something good still waits at the end of this road. Maybe not riches, maybe not fame, but home. And the chance to tell their story the way they choose. Because that, too, is something we carry back. The right to shape the tale, to say, I was there, to say it mattered, to say I came back. And so, when the carts roll on and the fires die down and the road stretches ahead, what they carry is not just baggage. It's pieces of the field, of the fight, of the people they met, of the person they were, and perhaps too of the person they're becoming. It begins sooner than you'd expect. You've barely returned home. Your boots are still muddy. Your armor still creaks when you breathe. You're still pulling straw from your cloak and finding odd bruises in the mirror. And yet, already, the story has begun to change. Not on purpose, not maliciously, but gently, naturally, like water finding new paths through stone. It starts with a question. So, what was it like? And you pause. Because how do you explain what it was like? The noise? The smell? The way the sky looked more gray than blue even at noon? Do you talk about the moment you dropped your sword and accidentally kicked it into a bush? Do you talk about the time your voice cracked mid-battle shout and the man next to you laughed, and that laughter gave you the courage to swing again? Or do you say something simpler? It was hard. It was loud. We held the line. Already something has shifted because telling the truth is tricky. Not because you're lying, but because memory isn't fixed. It's fluid. And the words you choose begin to shape what you remember. You leave out the part where you fell, not because you're ashamed, just because it feels unnecessary. You forget the rain that soaked through your boots. You exaggerate the size of the hill you charged, and before long, your story has legs. It walks from your lips to someone else's ears, and from there, it walks again. Now it's being told at the tavern. A man stands, flagon in hand, saying, "My cousin fought in that battle. Said it was like thunder rolling through the bones." He never said that, but now he has. Because someone else did. Because it sounded better. And so the story grows. Like ivy, clinging, winding, beautiful in its own way, even as it covers up the stone. The man who slipped in the mud becomes the man who slipped on blood. The girl who helped a wounded knight becomes the girl who fought 3 at once. The archer who hit a tree trunk 6 times now pinned an enemy to a tree with 1 shot. And no one stops it, because it doesn't feel wrong. It feels earned, deserved. A bit of polish on something tarnished, a little golden paint on a memory that still stings. Even you start to believe it, not because you forgot, but because your mind gently edits it wants coherence and comfort and maybe, just maybe, applause. There's a scene now, in a market square. A bard is telling the tale, not yours, but something like it. He sings of brave knights with names too noble to be real, of sunsets glinting off sword points, of dragons. There were no dragons, but someone in the crowd nods anyway, because it sounds right, because it fills the space that confusion left behind. And when you hear it, something curious happens. You don't feel angry. You feel amused, maybe even proud, because it's still your story in a way. Even if the names are different, even if the truth has been draped in silk, because the feeling is there. That strange mix of fear and courage, of not knowing what you were doing, but doing it anyway. And isn't that worth remembering? Isn't that worth singing about? Later, someone carves a stone. They place it near the site of the battle. It says, "Here stood the brave." It doesn't name them all. It can't. But it tries. And even if the list is incomplete, the intention is whole. Children read the plaque. One says, "My grandfather was there." And maybe he was. Maybe he carried soup, or ran a message, or just stood shaking behind a shield. But now he is part of something large, something told, something held. And maybe that's okay, because stories change. They always do. They soften the sharp edges. They smooth the contradictions. They find the meaning the moment didn't have time to offer. They let us turn the awful into the understandable, the pain into the poetic, the awkward into the epic. And yes, some truths are lost, but others are found. Deeper ones. Not the exact shape of the battlefield, but the feeling of standing there. Not the number of steps you ran, but the reason you kept running. So when your story changes, when it drifts and expands, and finds new voices, you let it. You don't cling too hard, because you know the heart of it remains. That you were there, that you tried, that you returned, and that somewhere, someone now believes that heroes once walked where you did. Even if one of those heroes tripped on a turnip cart, especially because of that. When the day has bled into evening and the camp's noises have dwindled into soft murmurs beneath the canvas, something changes. Not instantly, not dramatically, but quietly. A gentle shift that marks the end of motion and the beginning of reflection. The fire is low. The embers glow faintly. The last of the soups and stews have been eaten and the dull clank of metal tools has quieted. Silence grows comfortable, like a blanket you can finally relax into. In the darkness, beneath pale stars, or under a light moon, sleep begins its quiet work. Not all at once. Some drift off smoothly. Others take hours to still the thoughts racing in their minds. Images of clashing steel, of shouts swallowed by mud, of distant faces both lost and still near, but slowly, inevitably sleep claims them. And then come the dreams. Dreams are strange companions in the post-battle night. They are not always wild or surreal. Often they are gentle. Sometimes they replay the day's events, but with altered textures, war softened, wounds closed, fear recast as courage. Sometimes they give comfort where there was none. Let's walk through a few such dreams. The soldier who dreams of home. He lies under his patched cloak, his back against a stump by the fire. His eyelids flutter, weightless with exhaustion. In his dream, he's home. The wooden porch is warm from summer afternoon sun. His dog, still alive in this memory, wags its tail, muddy paws leaving prints on the boards waiting for him. He hears the soft creak of the screen door. He breathes in the scent of fresh bread, baked that morning. There are voices, family, chattering, the clink of dishes, a laugh that sounds like his sister's. He smiles, tears leaking. For a moment, this is more real than anything else. The night's dance of steel. The night's dream is a waltz. Steel glides through air in a graceful dance, not a deadly clash. The sky is a polished silver, reflecting each movement in slow motion. He's not fighting, he's performing. Each strike and parry has rhythm. Each pivot lands cleanly. There is joy. There is precision. He lands on a soft floor, not dirt, glances at a crowd that applauds, hears no pain. When he wakes, he attempts a stretch, but winces in memory of the ache he doesn't yet quite remember. Marjorie in the poppy field. Marjorie's armor is gone. She stands barefoot in a field of bright red poppies beneath an enormous summer sky. The breeze moves the flowers like waves, and they brush her ankles gently. There is no armor, no sword, no fear. She walks slowly, humming a lullaby her mother taught her, the same lullaby she hummed before the battle. She smiles. The world is still and kind. She picks a poppy and tucks it behind her ear. She breathes in, wide and amazed. When she awakens, the dream lingers like perfume. The lost friend and the rippled stream. A boy, barely more than a man, lies under a thin blanket. He dreams of someone lost. His friend, his brother, maybe just a kind face. They sit beside a shallow stream. Stones float like memories in the water. They toss them in together. The stones create ripples, wide, expanding, gentle. The boy hears no words, but feels understanding and forgiveness in the quiet. He does not wake until tears slip down. In the morning light, he wonders if his eyes were wet or if the breeze moved a leaf across his cheek. The night of absurdity. Another man, too exhausted to think, dreams of nonsense. Ducks wearing helmets march in formation behind a cornet playing. Goose. A horse stands at a podium delivering a speech about courage in battle. Swords turn into sticks of cheese. The laughter from the dream wakes him, hiccuping, and he grins in the dark. For once, no nightmares, just nonsense that breaks through fear. The shared collective dream. This is not a single person's dream, but something deeper, a soft wave of sleep that moves collectively through the camp. Not everyone dreams the same thing, but there is a thread, a sense of relief, of belonging, of shared survival. There's warmth in vulnerability. There's acceptance in the quiet hush after the noise. A silent lullaby that carries from one tent to another, weaving through the alcoves and embers. These dreams are personal, but they share patterns. They soften the hardest edges. They give small gifts, comfort, remembrance, laughter, healing. You don't dream the smell of blood. You dream bread baking. Not the taste of sweat, but the sweetness of parsley on hot stew. Not the sound of battle cries, but someone's voice humming softly you barely heard before. For some, dreams offer apology for surviving. For others, dreams offer promise, a promise that the life that remains can be gentle, just for a moment without tragedy. And in those dreams, something like hope returns. But then morning comes. The shadows shift. The embers die out. Sleep unravels, leaving behind drowsy eyes and bruised limbs. The scents of the night, poppies, bread, dew, fade into the earthy notes of a cold dawn. But the feeling lingers, of having been held, in sleep, and memory. The battleground may have changed bodies. The camp may have mended but not forgotten. But the night holds their frailties and their strengths together in the slender space between darkness and sunrise. They wake gently, not ready for triumph, not shaken by regret, just ready to be present again. A final thought. What we dream, that night is a reflection of what we carry inside: grief, relief, humor, longing. Dreams are small acts of mercy from the mind. They remind us, under the weight of what was seen, that there remains softness, humanity, promise. They anchor us back to ourselves. And for listeners, perhaps curled up, earbuds in, soft lamp on, they are an invitation to rest, to let go, to remember that in darkness we are held, in memory we are honored, and in dreams we find a path forward. This is the end of our journey. Sleep well.